Hi everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Last week I talked about the movie What the Health, and I got a lot of comments, a lot of questions, a lot of private messages, and wanted to address one thing. There was one point I wanted to make in the movie, but it was a little too long to include in that live chat. But I don't want to miss it, okay? So I have actually talked a lot about eating like a gorilla. What does it mean to eat like a gorilla? In fact, in my book, The Omni Diet, Honor, can you hand me that book right there? I wrote about eating like a gorilla and what does that mean. So I have a story in there about two gorillas, Beback and Makolo. And it's a great story. I actually got to interview the zoologist from the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo about Beback and Makolo. So Beback and Makolo live at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, and they were barely middle-aged when they developed heart disease, which is the leading cause of death for gorillas that are warehoused. Warehoused means in captivity, okay? So this has perplexed zoologists for a long time because in the wild, gorillas don't actually die of things like heart disease or diabetes, like at all. They usually die of things like infections, or they are poached, or respiratory illnesses like pneumonia. So this has perplexed zoologists because in captivity, the #1 cause of death is heart disease. So they wanted to figure this out since they had these two gorillas that were just barely middle-aged and dying of heart disease. And they looked at all aspects of their lives and they decided, well, let's start with their diet. And so I asked them, so why did you start with their diet? What was wrong with their diet? And they explained to me that in captivity, warehoused gorillas are typically fed nutritional cookies. Now, I thought that was kind of an oxymoron, but I asked them about this, and they said, well, it started off with good intentions. It was to make sure that they could control the amount of nutrients, vitamins, minerals, all of that stuff, the protein that the gorillas were getting, and they could control the amounts. And so sort of universally, all gorillas began to eat these nutritional cookies. But see, there's one problem. Gorillas in the wild don't eat things like grains. They don't eat starches. Even the berries that they eat are very bitter. They don't really get a lot of sugar at all. So you can see why this started to be a problem. And so they suspected that at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, and they decided to eliminate that or at least radically reduce it and begin to introduce their natural diet, what they would normally eat in the wild. And so they began giving them pounds and pounds and pounds of wild greens, bamboo, nuts, seeds, flax, and they began to scatter it around their habitat. So now the gorillas had to forage. See, when they were eating the cookies, they would just sort of gobble them up really quickly. So now they had to move. They had to move their bodies. And there's one more really interesting thing that used to happen. When they were eating the cookies, actually it's not just them, almost all warehoused gorillas, this common behaviors that are seen with warehoused gorillas are that they pull their hair out and they eat it. And they often regurgitate their food and re-eat it. And the zoologists have never really known why. They don't know if it is sort of the neurotic behavior, an anxious behavior, or if they're actually trying to regurgitate the cookies back up and re-eat them because they like the taste of the sugar. They're not sure what it is. But in any case, that's commonly seen in warehoused gorillas, but never seen in the wild. In fact, it's never, ever been seen in the wild gorillas. So when they began feeding Beback and Makolo their natural diet, and the gorillas began moving and spending all day foraging most of the day, up to 70% of their day, moving around and eating what they would normally eat, not only did the gorillas lose 65 pounds each within a year, but their neurotic behaviors stopped. But what's really cool is that Beback reversed his heart disease, Makolo radically slowed the progression of his heart disease, and here's the catch. Here's what I really want you to get. The gorillas were eating double the calories, double what they would normally eat. So anyways, the gorillas now were eating double the calories, losing weight, improving their heart function, stopping their neurotic behaviors. Now, of course, this made me think of the patients we treat who have trichotillomania, which is hair pulling, and eating disorders, right? So were the gorillas crazy, or were they being poisoned? It's a really good question. It makes you think. So it just made me wonder. So I was questioning the zoologist further, and I'm like, So I was a vegan in the past, and I want to know, maybe we should all be eating like gorillas. Maybe we should all adopt that diet. Sounds pretty logical to me. Gorillas are, I mean, they're pretty bad, right? I mean, they're muscular, pound for pound. They're one of the strongest animals alive. So I was like, maybe we should all be eating that way. And here's the part that really got to me. When I really looked into this, I wrote this down. I don't know if you guys can see this. Unfortunately, my lighting in here is not amazing. So when I really looked into this, here's the truth. When I say eat like a gorilla, what I really mean is it's a metaphor. Eat clean, lots of plants, a little protein, not a lot of protein, a little protein, and no processed foods, like Saddleback and Church. Clean up your diet. Move your body. But not exactly like a gorilla. And why? Because when I dug deeper into this, here's the deal. You're not a gorilla, okay? So I hate to say that. Genetically, our DNA is actually very similar to a gorilla, but there are obviously differences. There are differences with our brains. There are differences with our GI tracts. In fact, the GI tract is fairly significant, the differences. I wrote down a few things between humans and some of the other herbivores like cows and gorillas, because I know a lot of people try to compare us to these herbivores and say we should be eating like that. But I just want you to think about a couple of things, okay? I'm not telling you how to eat, but I do want to point out that you're not those animals, okay? So just pay attention. When you adopt a lifestyle, when you adopt a diet, make sure that you're eating for your optimal nutrition, not like that animal eats. So even if you want to eat an entirely plant-based diet, that's fine. But make sure you're getting the nutrients that you need as a human, and understand that the way that those animals eat is based on their biology and physiology, not yours. Okay, so for example, humans have one stomach. We've got one stomach. Cows, they've got like this 4-chamber stomach. So they have a very different digestive process. We use enzymes for digestion. So you put food in your mouth, immediately enzymes begin to break down carbohydrates. You've got other enzymes, in your gut that begin to break down proteins, and then other ones that break down fat, but we use enzymes to break down our food. They use microbial fermentation. So these microbes from the plants they eat, those plants stay a long time and they ferment, and that's where they get their nutrients from, is from that fermentation process. Also, we don't digest cellulose. It's a good fiber source. If you don't eat too much of it, you need the right amount of it. Most of us don't get enough, unfortunately. Americans don't get enough fiber. But we don't digest it. The reason that it works for us in a positive way is because we don't digest it and it sweeps things out. But these animals digest cellulose. So that right there should tell you our digestive systems are very different. Okay? Now so cows and then some of the other, almost all herbivores have this part of it where they digest cellulose. Gorillas. Think about one thing. If a human were to have a big belly, okay, it's considered unhealthy, right? You're storing fat if you've got a big belly. Gorillas are healthy if they have a big belly. Why? Because they've got this bigger GI tract. They've got a bigger colon. Why? Because they need that fermentation process. The food has to stick around longer, right? So all the plants they eat need to stay in their system longer so they can have that fermentation process. So those microbes have a chance to give them that nutrient, the nutrition that they need. Also, that longer GI system gives them a chance to extract protein from the plants. Plants contain a lot of protein, but humans don't necessarily, we're not very efficient at extracting most of it. But the big thing is, a gorilla can eat up to 40 or 50 pounds of greens and plant-based foods a day. They spend almost all day doing it in order to get that nutrition that they need. We can't do that. We're not that efficient. Now, I understand we're also different in size, but even if you broke it down pound for pound, that's a lot of food, right? We don't eat that much food, and we don't have that much time to sit there and eat all of that food. So there are some differences. So don't compare yourself to exactly, literally to these animals. When I say eat like a gorilla, I'm using Saddleback and Church as the example, because when they cleaned up their diet and they're eating for them. Oh, by the way, one very important point. Those animals do get some bugs. They actually do get some protein. They get the bugs and slugs and snails that are on those plants. So the idea that they don't get any type of protein other than plant-based protein is actually incorrect. Yes, it's not as much as proportionately. So that's why we would say, like when I say it, I say eat small amounts like medicine, like tiny amounts of protein. And it doesn't all have to be animal-based protein. You can eat plant-based proteins, some organic fermented tofu or some plant-based protein powders are really great source for vegans. I just want you to think, if you're going to be a vegan, be a healthy vegan, still get your protein, because you're not getting all of it necessarily unless you are really doing it consciously, because you're not a gorilla and you're not a cow. So I just wanted to put that out there. I also wanted to talk about, I want to use another example because this is really important. So my dog, I want to show you the importance and the power of food, just like with Beback and Makolo. So my dog recently, I've told this story before. In fact, I told it on PBS when I did a public television show. I've done it twice now on the Omni Diet and also on our recent one, 50 Ways to Grow Your Brain. So very fascinating. Aslan, our big white shepherd, is just gorgeous. He's got this amazing, beautiful white coat, but he's a very sensitive beast. And this is the second time we've had this issue with him. We've had him on super high quality, premium, grainless food. When we bought him, we got like the top quality food we could find, and we had him on it. We could never figure out why this dog was in the vet nonstop. Ear infections, hot spots, vomiting, diarrhea, just nonstop problems with him. Thousands of dollars at the vet. Finally, one day I had no choice. I thought that an animal had attacked him. His whole back was just ripped apart. And so I took him into the vet, and this vet looked at me and he says he's got food sensitivities. And I literally almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, duh, I do this with people. Like, why did I not figure this out with my dog, right? You just figure you're supposed to be able to give your dog dog food. Yeah, but it doesn't work like that, right? He's not getting his natural food. So I talked to this vet. This vet was one of the few who was actually pretty savvy and didn't get kickbacks from one of the big dog food companies. I'm not going to name names, but it basically is SD. So anyways, talk about big food, big pharma, big government, but in this case, big food, big... anyways, I'll go on. So anyways, so he was really savvy, and he explained to me how to clean my dog's skin up, put him on a novel protein, get rid of the regular dog food. So I started feeding him a raw food diet. Literally within a matter of a couple weeks, that dog was the healthiest dog you'd ever seen, with the most beautiful coat, no more problems, no more vet bills at all. Like, he never went back to the vet. So for about a year and a half, he never went back to the vet. So they say that within about a year of doing that, their systems, just like when people do an elimination diet, he should be able to eat a really high quality dog food that, because his gut will be healed, and a really high quality dog food that's grainless, that doesn't contain any fillers, blah, blah. So I found one. Took a couple, but I found one that he didn't react to. Everything was great for about 6 months. All of a sudden, the dog couldn't stand up. He had all these joint problems. He literally couldn't stand up. I take him to the vet. They're like, he's got joint disease. He needs a double knee replacement. I'm like, what? My dog needs a double knee replacement? They said yes. I'm like, wait, could it be something systemic? Nope, he's got this joint disease. So I looked at his blood work. I had them do blood work, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, that looks systemic to me. So I'm like, are you sure? They're like, no, we're sure. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hold off. Both Daniel and I said, this doesn't sound right. We need to just slow down, get another opinion. And so we decided to hold off a little bit, which was really hard because the dog was in pain. But all of a sudden, within about another week, he started vomiting. He started being lethargic. And the next thing I know, another week later, he's ripping his fur out. Literally, his skin was totally macerated. In fact, I have pictures of the whole thing. So this was when it... Can you see this on there?
Oh, yeah.
So that was when he first started it. He ripped all his fur out. His skin was just bloody, macerated. And that was when, click, I went, oh my God, he's reacting to his food again. Let's put him back on the raw food diet that healed him up the last time. Within a week, it scabbed over. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Scabbed over. Within another week, this was his skin. It's like half the size and nice and pink. A week after that, oh wait, whoops, that's the wrong one. Nice and pink and almost healed. Week after that, pink and healed, and now the hair's growing back in. Oh, and by the way, he's now running around my house like a puppy, torturing my cat. No vomiting, no diarrhea, no lethargy, gone. So yes, it's a little more expensive to put him on the raw food diet. This is the same thing we hear from people. Not as expensive as a double knee replacement. Not to mention that had we had the double knee replacement done on him and he still had the inflammatory process going on in his body, he wouldn't have healed right. It wouldn't have really mattered. He'd have still had lethargy, vomiting, diarrhea. So this can, you can go grab that if you want. So this is all a problem. So do you see why this is problematic?
Call from.
Sorry, my phone decided to ring right when I'm doing my live chat. Sorry about that. So anyways, so if we had had the surgery and we didn't heal the inflammatory process in his body, he would have just gotten sicker. Now that we healed the inflammatory process, I'm okay if he actually does need surgery, but at the moment, he clearly does not. So that was the message that I want to give you. Certainly, I'm not saying eat like my dog, who eats mostly raw meat, okay? But I am saying eat what is natural to you. Get your important numbers checked. Be rational, logical, thoughtful. When someone says, metaphorically, eat like a gorilla, eat like a whatever, use your brain. So you're a person, you're a human, and guess what? You have a bigger brain than most, just about every animal alive. So use it and be thoughtful and rational with your program. So I hope this was helpful. Oh, and I know you guys are going to ask me what the dog food is because a billion people always write into me. Well, not a billion, but you know what I mean. After our PBS show runs, it's called Primal. There is another dog food that is raw that is equally good, but Primal is the brand that we use, and it just works for us. So for us, it's worth the extra money to not see the dog in pain and to save the money in vet bills. All right, take care. Have a great afternoon.